Because why are there 6 rounds of interviews? I hate it here. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Lindsay. I am a senior product designer and apparently a content creator. And if you're not new here, welcome back, hoes. I know it's been a while. We're not going to talk about that. Today, I am here to kick off my new series that is going to be focused on UX and product design interviews. We are going to go through all of the phases, the stages. We are going to go in depth. We're going to get all the advice I have for you to get your foot in the door because, baby, in this current market, you have to be on point every step of the way. And I'm going to help you get there. Duh. But first, today's candle vibe of the day is to-do list because I know you need to focus. So before we really get into this, I wanted to talk about the difference between roles and if the process is the same for both UX UI positions and product design roles. And the answer is yes and no. So let me explain. I could probably make a whole different video about this, and let me know in the comments if you want me to. But hold up, take a look at this handy dandy graphic and pause and read if you need to. This outlines some of the differences in the roles and highlights how product widens into business and strategy. So, for example, a UX UI designer might be more likely to design something like the Apple website or a DoorDash app, while a product designer might do things more complex like Claude or software like Slack. Products can also be seen as an advanced role if you're not transitioning from a similar background like product management. So, should you start out interviewing for UX UI roles or product design roles? Ultimately, this will depend a lot on your background, what you're coming from, if you're starting from scratch, what you may have been learning or building out in case studies if you were in a boot camp or a course. So what I would recommend, and which is also the way I got started, is going for UX UI roles that focus more specifically on websites, marketplaces, e-commerce. It is a lot easier, especially in today's market, to get kind of freelance and real world experience when it comes to building websites or e-commerce stores a lot more easily than you can get a freelance project, especially as a beginner, or real world experience building out an app or a product. So know where you are, but also take these things into consideration when it comes to the types of roles you are applying for. Product design does not have to be an advanced role, but a lot of times it typically is. So you should work on getting your foot in the door in the UX UI specific side of things that are more focused on websites and responsive experiences. When it comes to the overall process of design interviews, every company is different. But if you know these different stages and what to expect, you can stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And staying ready is very important when it comes to this process. Personally, I've experienced a role that had up to 6 or 7 rounds of interviews that I actually went through. 10 do not recommend unless it's a company that is your dream company or the type of role that you're super passionate about. Luckily, anytime I've done one of these extensive processes, I have gotten an offer and perhaps even taken the role. But baby, if I didn't,
you want to fight?
we would have had a problem. And that is a reality for a lot of people, especially in today's market, going through all these rounds of interviews and still ending up getting ghosted or their face played in by these recruiters. So just keep that in mind when you're learning more about the process and learning about the steps that will be included for that particular company. Anywho, without further ado, let me give you a breakdown of all of these steps and possible parts of the process, which I will break down more in depth as we go through this series, but I definitely wanted to get a general overview in this intro. So the recruiter call. I tend to look at this as just a vibe check. So it's probably the part of the process that I'm the most relaxed with and the least worried about. Usually they really just want to get a feel for what you're looking for, hear a little bit more about your experience and what's on your resume, hearing it firsthand from you instead of just reading, and just trying to see if things really align. So this is a good time to express what you're looking for in a role, find out what they're looking for from a designer who is going to be taking this position, align on a salary range, and what the next steps in the process overall will be. as easy and casual as these conversations can be, usually either over the phone or now via Zoom or Google Hangouts video, whatever, one thing to make sure of is that this is just a general recruiter, because if it is a more technical recruiter or somebody who is on a designer product team, they might come from jump with some heavy hitting questions. So look a little bit more into the recruiter's background and what they do at the company so that you can be prepared, because what the okay. Next is typically a hiring manager interview or an interview with somebody that is specifically on the design team that you will be working either directly with or directly under. This is when you need to know your stuff, because this is where they probably will ask you a little bit more technical questions when it comes to design, the tools you use, processes you've kind of worked with, teams that you've worked with and their kind of structure. All of those things you need to be prepared to talk about in this interview, but as well as really taking notes on, again, what they're looking for specifically from a designer in this role, what kind of expertise you may need to have, what tools you may need to work with. Get a feel for the company and working under this person, how it may feel. See if there's a company and culture fit. I know when you're just looking for anything, you might not care about all these things, but I promise in the long run, if it's somewhere you want to stay, you want to start paying attention at this stage of the interview. Come ready to talk about your past work, some past experiences. But again, usually there are several more rounds after that these days in interviews. So also be prepared to present portfolio and talk about a lot of other things more in depth at a later time. One thing you can do to prepare for this level of interview is first ask the recruiter who is helping putting you through this process what to expect from the call and what you need to prepare, if anything. Usually at that time, they'll let you know if you need to have any type of portfolio available or if it'll just be a casual chat at this stage. So that's usually really helpful. You can also kind of take a hint from the amount of time that is allotted for the interview. If it's anywhere from 30 minutes or less, you're probably just going to be having a casual chat. If it goes from 45 minutes to an hour, you probably should be prepared to talk about some of your work or case studies more specifically. Next, we get into the portfolio review, and this is the most have your shit together part of the process that you are going to experience. This could go one of two ways. They could either want you to kind of click around your website or your online portfolio and go through a few pieces, talking over them a little bit generally, but not directly reading from your portfolio and what you have there. So you need to be very comfortable with the projects that you do display in your portfolio, and also kind of try to hone in on which projects may be the most relevant to this role or company. What's often more of the scenario is that you do a portfolio presentation where you pick one project from your portfolio to go through in depth. So this is usually more in the form of a slideshow presentation. I usually do a Figma slideshow or a prototype kind of slideshow in Figma. A lot of times being in Figma helps them see that you use the program. So I like to create in Canva and then bring it over to Figma just to click through, just so they can see I really use the program all the time. So what this will be is you really going in depth into your process, your part of the project, what you specifically worked on, the team structure that you're used to working on, how you collaborate. Being able to mention all of these things in the portfolio review is super important. And again, I'll be doing a more in-depth video on how this should look and how you should present. So don't worry, stay tuned in the series for that. Design exercises are the bane of my existence. I'm not going to lie. Any of the live thinking, live scenarios, whiteboarding, even some of the take-home challenges can be a really daunting part of the process, but it's something you should absolutely be prepared for. and absolutely should expect. This is where they really want to get a feel for if you really know your stuff and be able to see your design thinking live. They want to see how in any scenario you're able to think on your toes and come up with a solution for whatever problem is presented. Now, again, this could be something that is set up as an hour, a panel done live. It could be something that is a timed task for you to complete on your own. I'll get into how I like to get paid for those and why in the series, but just know that some form of design exercise is typically going to be a part of the process. Next, we have the cross-functional interviews, and I tend to group these as anytime you're talking to somebody else outside of that hiring manager or that recruiter. Typically, it's somebody else who will be another part of the team or someone you will be working closely with. So for a small startup, you might be talking to a founder. For any company, you might be talking to an engineer that you will collaborate with, another member of the design team, any kind of design managers. It usually varies, and you're usually going to talk to multiple people. This can be structured into a one-day setup that mimics the way people used to go in and meet multiple people while they're there. So it may be 30-minute chats with each different person, all scheduled on one day or typically within the same week on a time frame, just depending on schedules. You will be able to have a vibe check with them, get to know more about them, maybe why they chose the company, and those questions that you can ask them back in the end. But also just know that they will typically come with some behavioral questions like, tell me a time when, kind of scenarios. So be prepared to really talk about your work and know which projects are relevant to this company and things that you can kind of really reflect back on to really show your experience and that you basically know your shit. And last but not least, we have the negotiation stage. And this is a part of the process where we're talking money and making sure we're getting paid our worth. You might be used to this just coming in the form of a casual offer letter where you can then respond via email, negotiate that way, or just accept it as is. But in my experience, sometimes I have had a negotiation call scheduled. It seemed intimidating at first, and I was ready to stand on business on that call. But really, especially when it comes to startup, explaining equity, explaining benefits, that's really what that negotiation call is for. Really just to inform you of all of the details that are going to be in that contract and offer. You can ask any questions, talk about any wiggle room and considerations, but then ultimately you do have that chance, in my experience, to still communicate via email instead of being pressured to go toe to toe on the phone to make sure you're getting that offer. Either way it goes, make sure that you are getting your worth. Don't do too much in this market, but if you've already discussed ranges and you know that you are somebody who is going to bring expertise and experience to this role, be able to try to go for the top of that range in negotiations because they are going to start as low as they possibly can. So I hope this wasn't discouraging at all. If anything, I just try to be real about it, especially in this day and age where everybody is trying to do a few courses and a few boot camps and get into the field, and it is just not turning out to be that easy, right? Right. So if you're going through the process, please like this video, subscribe, and stay tuned for the rest of the series. Let me know any questions you have in the comments. I'm here for you.